So it's a real treat for me today to speak to you guys. And I know we've got some big people in the audience, so I appreciate them coming along as well. So my name is Jason Selby. I'm Chief Architect at Aviva, and I've been there for just over 6 years. For those of you who don't know, Aviva is one of a handful of global composite insurers. So we offer a broad waterfront of products across life, home, motor, travel, investment and retirement products. We operate across 16 different markets globally, and we have 33 million customers who we transact with on a pretty regular basis, either through a number of business channels, direct, intermediated, broker, or through employers as well. So we have every channel, every insurance product, and every technology channel. So we also have direct, face-to-face, phone, and other technology channels through which we interact with our customers. So we have many times many business models that we operate in. I have about 200 architects working for me across enterprise and solution, and we are very, very busy all the time, and it's a great place to work. I just included a couple of things about our strategy for this presentation. I think they're quite important because what I want to talk about today is really hidden value in architecture, and specifically one of the ways that we uncover that hidden value is by our connection to that strategy. We're very lucky in Aviva for two reasons. One, we have a really clear and simple strategy that we all relate to, and if you talk to almost any member of the organisation, they can basically play back that strategy to you, and that really helps us from a technology point of view in delivering what we need to do. And if you look at our values at the bottom, you see we've got some really simple values as well, and they also help with our strategy because they're very direct around the customer relationship, and that really helps us position IT correctly in the role that we have to play in the organisation. Last, I also want to mention sponsorship. The sponsorship for architecture within the Aviva organisation is second to none. We have a huge amount of sponsorship for the work we do, the authority and the mandate we take from our role, and we're very fortunate to have that all the way up to CEO level. So it's a very good place from an architecture point of view to share our direction, to work with our colleagues, and really to drive the mandate that we want to across the organisation. Okay, so moving on. So I've got a few things I want to talk to you guys about today. I want to lay out effectively 3 strategies for unlocking value within the enterprise. The first is really connecting to enterprise value from architecture. The second is effectiveness of the individual architect in the organisation. And then the last is ensuring that the decisions we make are the right decisions to drive the organisation forward. So I've only got 20, probably 18 minutes now, but we've got a ton of material to cover, and I kind of hope you enjoy the journey. And we'll have a debate later, disagree, agree, but it's a point of view, and it's something I kind of heartily believe in. So let's talk about connecting to enterprise value. So once I move away from the microphone, I'll speak up, so hopefully everyone can still hear it back. But if some of you who are familiar with EVA as a value metric within an organisation, from an investment point of view, it's a measure of the investment return that you get within an organisation. If you work in the third sector or you work in the public sector, you'll have other value metrics in terms of the taxpayers' money or the donors' money that comes to your organisation, and the value that the organisation needs to provide on the basis of that input. So whilst we often talk about the expenditure on IT within industry, so just under 4 trillion a year in 2018 for complete IT expenditure, that's input value. What we really need to talk about today is output value. So what is the value you get from that technology as an organisation? This this is an enterprise value measure, so it's a measure from an investment point of view. If I'm investing in an organisation, I expect to get some sort of return. And that return I get is always measured against the cost of capital to that organisation. So if I was deciding whether I wanted to buy shares in Aviva or any other organisation, I really want to be in the red zone, right? And I only want to put money into that organisation if I get a return. And that return is really composed of two things. The way I achieve that return is my operating profit after taxes and my capital stock. IT as an organisation can only affect that in two real ways. We can affect the amount of volume we put through and the profitability of that sales, and the operating margin we have and we operate against that organisation. So if we are very reductionist about how IT operates in a value context, what we need to think about is how we pull those two levers. Increase sales opportunity or increase operating margin. There are many other ways of looking at value for an organisation, but if we just take a very reductionist view, this is one lever two levers that we can pull in IT. Now the enterprise role in pulling those levers is really connected to business change outcomes. The things that we can do as architects to make a difference to our businesses. And in some ways, what I would like to do today is, whilst I think methodology for architects is hugely important, it gives us a consistent voice, it gives us a way of communicating with each other. The important thing that we need to do as a profession is make sure we always connect to value. So the architecture levers that we choose to pull need to have a straight line through to how they drive enterprise value for any organisation. So kind of that's the first pillar, first strategy I want to offer. And then when we look at that, we need to make sure that we understand the value, we measure it, and we improve it. So our architecture choices we make back to that organisation need to be very clear, and we need to connect that value as clearly as we possibly can. So let me offer you 4 rules for the first strategy to think about. 1, understand what drives value in your enterprise. IT must deliver to push or pull those levers to increase value for the organisation. 3, architecture has a unique position. We take a long-term view of how those capabilities are placed and how we drive that value. And lastly, we as an architecture team must understand what drives value for our organisations. We must understand what creates profit, what creates efficiency for our organisation, or what achieves its mission if we're looking at a third sector or a public sector organisation. So bear that in mind as we move forward to the second strategy. Okay, the second strategy is about the individual effectiveness of the architect. So whether you like it or not, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, the IT estate will change with or without your influence. And that is a truism for us as a profession. Does anybody know who the figure on the left-hand side is? It's Cassandra. So Cassandra is the prophetess in the Trojan War. She was a princess of Troy. And she was given the gift of prophecy by the god Apollo. And you can see the little Trojan horse on the bottom left. But her curse was that she wasn't believed. So she would always give true prophecies, but unfortunately she wasn't believed. So as an architect, the important thing from an effectiveness point of view is you're operating in your environment and you have personal impact and provide direction to that organisation. Because you can have the best strategy in the world, and you can follow the first strategy we laid out in our value conversation. But whatever you do, if you're not believed, if you're not effective, it's all moot. Okay? So we'll talk about how we do that as leadership, provide leadership to the organisation. Second point is, I talked about the unique position in which architecture operates. We're all in a hugely privileged position, right? we are the ultimate steward of IT capability. I don't know what your role in this system is, but typically it's longer lived than any CEO in your organisation or any CIO in your organisation. And certainly in our organisation we have some very long-lived systems. And this should be your minimum consideration within your role. You have a long-term role, and you steward the technology capability like no other part of the organisation. You'll find in many cases, even from a business point of view, you will have a longer-term view than any of the business people within your organisation as well. So the second point is the architecture role needs to cover full cycle. We're not finished with the roadmap. I asked the architects in my team to ensure that they cover their responsibilities all the way through to execution and service as well. I don't think you're fulfilling your role as an architect unless you're operating within the full life cycle context of technology, all the way through to delivery and beyond. And then the last one is, I don't know whether it's controversial for you. It's not controversial for me. You're not here to assist. You're not here to provide a viewpoint and walk away. You're not here to offer advice. You're here to provide leadership to the organisation. And I think it's a very important aspect of the architecture role. You have a mandate, for me, a professional mandate, and you have a professional accountability. I think the challenge with architecture is that connection to value, the long-term view, means that connection is not always apparent. And that's something that I think as a profession we need to address as we move forward and develop our professional standing with most of the organizations. So the last point around the effectiveness of the architect, I'll just leave you for a moment to read the quote. It's having a point of view. The challenge is we often take decisions, or we're asked to advise on decisions with limited context and limited accountability. So I think architects must lead with purpose to be effective. They must lead from a particular viewpoint, whether that's from the value strategy we discussed earlier, whether it's from a corporate strategy, from a people point of view, or from a mission, or from a standpoint of technical excellence that they want to drive within the organisation. And you own that. We all own that as technologists or business architects. We own that point of view for our organisation. So we've discussed firstly that enterprise value connection. Secondly, the effectiveness of the individual architect or the architecture team. Let's move on to decision making. The technology buffet. We have many choices in which we want to interact with the organisation. We have many capabilities we want to create, and we have now so many choices within which to do it. And for me, a key facet of the architecture role is making those decisions effectively and capably for the organisation. Very important. So I think there are three aspects to how we do that. One is the perspective. I feel that the best decisions that I see made within any organisation take the perspective into account in very clear detail. Firstly, from a strategic point of view, what are your organisational priorities? Are you in a growth phase? Are you in an efficiency phase? Are you in an expansion phase? Those inform the kind of decisions that you want to take, and maybe some of the technology choices that you want to make. Secondly, they're made in a context. What actual ability do you have to execute those decisions? You may have some very strong personal ambition for a technology or a capability you think is really going to take the organisation forward. but have you got the training? Have you got the capability in place? Are you able to maintain it once you put it in? Those aspects, I think need to be explicit in decision making. And lastly, consequences. If you're introducing a new skills base to your organisation, you might be eliminating an old one. That can have profound consequences on the workforce, location strategy, and supplier landscape. So all those things need to be taken into account when you make a decision. So understand the perspective that you're coming from. Secondly, I think any decision's got clear characteristics. Firstly, technically robust. I'm not going to go into that because you're all professionals, there's lots of industry literature about what that means, and at any given time your priorities might influence in certain directions, whether that's service, performance, whatever. Contextualize and complete. So that's contextualize within the perspective. So provide a full set of information from the perspective that you come from. If your priority is to grow your organisation, you need to share your decision making in the context of that growth. Those of you who are familiar with the Fowler architecture elevator, you need to be able to traverse up and down the layers of the organisation, all the way from engineering to the C-suite. And you need to be able to tailor your communication for those different floors within the organisation. And that's really hard work. That's really hard work when typically we want to lay it out from a particular perspective with a particular lens. Walking into a conversation with C-suite executive, as I did yesterday, they have particular needs in the way that you communicate with them. And you have to be clear in all those parts of the organisation. You need to offer choices. We had a little discussion earlier in terms of making choices for the organisation. You're making a recommendation, but the way that you make that recommendation has got to be against a set of choices. You're one stakeholder, you have a mandate and a direction that's been delegated to you, but there are other stakeholders with equally valid points of view. And lastly, is it testable? The good old days, or bad old days of architecture 15 or 20 years ago, you'd put an ERP in, it would take 5 years to implement, you'd do 2 years of functional analysis beforehand, you'd come back at the end of the day, spend 2 years running it, there's an 8-year cycle before you know whether you've made the right decision or not. A lot of architecture careers have been made on that, but those days, I hope, for many of you have gone. And, we live in a much more agile world. I work for 20 or 30% of my time with engineering teams now. I expect to be able to test my decisions and adjust my strategy. We go back to the perspectives, what actually works and what doesn't work for that organisation. It's got to be clear and it's got to inform my decision. Lastly, no methodology. I hope you recognise some of these. I hope some of them you don't recognise because, quite frankly, I'm not sure many people use some of those ones up there. But it must inform your decision-making process. It must address the value that you're trying to drive for the organisation. And if it becomes evidence to a decision, it must be able to be abstracted from that methodology, easily shared and communicated. And the methodology serves a role for you. It's not an outcome or an end in itself. It's there to drive decision-making within your organisation and inform the choices that you make. At the end of the day, you're making choices and you're informing them with the method. I'm very pro-method, but I see sometimes architecture teams becoming subservient to the method rather than taking the leadership role. And we just have to be careful. So we talked about the context, we talked about being explicit on the trade-offs, we talked about the role of method or process. Okay. So bringing all those three together, I would say connect to that value. I think it's very important to connect to the enterprise value. If you don't like EVA, choose another method. Maybe your organisation has another way of calculating it. I don't care. What I care about is that you connect your architecture decisions to that method. Secondly, as individuals, you've got to be effective. Because you might connect to value, you might have great ideas, but you've got to have impact. You've got to have the right mandate in the organisation. Thirdly, we talked about decision making. Architecture for me is a set of choices or decisions that you're making on behalf of the organisation. They've got to be good, they've got to be testable, and they've got to be ethical. Having said that, it's a journey, and everybody would love to be in a position when they have those three things connected from my point of view. And we have to take that journey step by step. And we have anti-patterns, just like the engineers do. I've made up 3 of these, so forgive me. And you can add your own. Maybe we can put a board up outside, and you can come up with your own architecture anti-patterns. But these are a hint that something's gone wrong in your organisation. I was going to put a whole load of diagnostic about value-driven, or are you being effective? You get the right stakeholder engagement, the right meetings. But I thought this would be a bit more fun, and you can tell me whether you recognise it. So, top left, something nasty in the woodshed, my particular favourite. The legacy system in your estate that no one dares to look at or do proper analysis on. Don't tell me you don't have one. Actually, everything is doable, and it's your job to address it. So bring the right people in, get the right analysis done, and face up to the responsibility you have. We're not doing it, and it's holding you back. There's something wrong. Second one, architects play golf. I took this off a wiki. In the heat of the big program piece of work that the organisation is doing, the architects are not in the game, or they've delivered the PowerPoint and they've gone off to play golf. Something's wrong. You need to be in the decision-making process, and you need to be present when the big things are happening, because that's your role. Thirdly, undecisions. Okay, this is a symptom of a poor organisational structure. We've made a decision. We've made a decision. We've made a decision. I've gone on holiday. We've unmade the decision. We've unmade the decision. We've unmade. You know something's wrong, right? And that could be with you and your approach. Maybe you didn't manage your stakeholders properly. It could be how you dealt with your method. It could be commercials. It's something. It's for you to help find out. You might need help and sponsorship. Last one, stuck in the elevator. We talked about the architecture elevator, moving up and down between the floors. If you're only traversing amongst your friends between floor 16 and 17 and not dealing with the C-suite, or you're not dealing with the engineering community, you're stuck. You're just talking to the people who are going to agree with you and not persuading those who you need to provide money, resources, or engineering engagement and expertise. So, lastly, the architecture journey and the role is a privileged, exciting role for any organisation. You have a unique perspective. Be optimistic about that role. The organisation's future is in your hands. You have a great opportunity to drive real value. Secondly, share your vision. You have a vision because you're an architect. Your job is to make sure everybody understands that and comes along to the journey. Absolutely, adapt your vision if you learn more. We have to humble ourselves as we move through the organisation, but share it. Lastly, and I have to give credit to David Knott, Chief Architect at HSBC, for this one. The rules that you thought previously, break any of them rather than do anything outright nonsensical. At the end of the day, we're rational human beings. We have irrational moments. But your opportunity is to do the right thing for your organisations. Thank you very much.